Brent Venables and some of his staff working under a new contract. And of course, they are working hard at recruiting this month of Now, that was a delayed response, but we are with you, everyone, here at the Voice of College Football. Wow. Okay, Oklahoma Sooners live here with, of course, Brent Venables and his staff working on the recruiting trail. Got Parker Thune here. Always appreciate Parker stopping by to provide his insight, his perspective, and his expertise. OU Insider and KREF Sports. That's noon to 3 Eastern, noon to 3 Central Time. Every Monday through Friday. Parker, how you doing today?
Doing great, Mark. Always a pleasure to join the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. Let's start with the last two commits in the door, both at the wide receiver position. We've got Marcus Harris out of California, Modern Day High School, of course, famous for producing NFL-type talent. Emmanuel Choice, a little bit further down the list of wide receivers, but still pretty prized commodity out of Lancaster.
Yeah, Mark, those are two big pickups for Emmett Jones, who has just done a phenomenal job on the recruiting end of things since joining Oklahoma's staff near a year and a half ago. He was hired in January of 2023, and really ever since, he's been tremendous as a recruiter. The addition of Marcus Harris was super interesting because Oklahoma really wasn't involved in that recruitment for the longest time, at least not ostensibly. He had visited in September of 2022. Unofficially, when he was just a sophomore in high school. But he had not been back to Oklahoma since that time when he took his official visit earlier this month. He had dropped a top 5 that did not include Oklahoma. Emmett Jones came to the decision that, you know what, I'm going to make a run at this kid late in the process, and that's exactly what Oklahoma did. He didn't get his official visit booked until the day before he showed up, so it all came together very spur of the moment, very late in the process, but he got on campus, loved it. He committed before leaving, and obviously I think what Oklahoma fans are now expecting later today is a commitment from 4-star 2026 quarterback Jaden O'Neal from Harbor City, California. He was on the visit with Marcus Harris. Those two go back a long way, and so of course, we won't know until the decision comes down, but the expectation for some time has been that Jaden O'Neal is going to be a Sooner, and I know that having him there in town and connecting with Marcus Harris certainly increased Harris's level of comfort in what he'd be getting himself into at Oklahoma, with O'Neal presumably coming down the chute as well for the Sooners. And then Emmanuel Choice, you mentioned, I love this kid. And Emmett Jones was the very first to offer him a scholarship, as a matter of fact. It's not often that Oklahoma will be the first scholarship offer for a prospect, but they were his first offer back in May of 2023. As it stands today, he's got standing offers from 34 FBS institutions. So Emmett Jones knew what he was looking at before anybody else did with Manny Choice, and Choice himself really valued that from Emmett Jones, valued the fact that he was the first to see the potential, that he wasn't really deterred, because Emmett Jones came from Texas Tech. At Texas Tech, if you're the first school to offer a kid that doesn't yet have any FBS interest, that's almost the expectation. Texas Tech is famous for being the first to offer kids in the state of Texas, especially, and being early on their evaluations because they kind of have to be. Oklahoma is afforded a little bit more luxury in that department, in that they don't have to eval a kid early typically to be able to have a solid shot at his commitment. And so you really don't need to be scouring the Lone Star State, or any state for that matter, for kids that have not yet picked up FBS scholarship offers yet. That's exactly what Emmett Jones was doing. He ran across Manny Choice and now ends up winning out over TCU, over USC, over Texas A&M, Texas, Missouri. There were schools all over the country that wanted this kid. I love his potential, love his ceiling. He's 6'4", and you'll find very few guys that are 6'4" that move as naturally and as fluidly as he does. So he's only a 3-star right now. But I think that's a kid that could have a very, very successful and very productive collegiate career if developed properly in a system like Oklahoma's.
When in doubt, folks, check the offers out. The rankings, there can be a large disparity between the 3 major services. Check out the offers And again, with an entire season to be played in high school football, those rankings can change considerably as well. Any other names out there that seem to be leaning in Oklahoma's direction or that they want to be pulling in their direction?
Well, I mentioned Jaden O'Neal. I think that one goes Oklahoma's way later today. They're closing in on a pledge from four-star Weatherford, Oklahoma defensive end CJ Nixon. That one is expected to become official here pretty shortly as well. So that's another one that OU fans are actively waiting on. They made a big surge at the Champ U barbecue with four-star edge rusher Max Granville out of the Houston area, who to that point, the intel favored Texas A&M. And Penn State, USC were also actively involved there, but Oklahoma got the last OV, really made it count. And then moreover, they're, I guess, in a holding pattern with the top prospect in the state of North Dakota, Cade Petchak. He took official visits to Wisconsin on May 31st, Oklahoma on June 7th, Nebraska on June 14th, and Kansas State just this past weekend, June 21st. So the Sooners are expecting his commitment. When that comes down, I'm not exactly sure, but that is expected to take place, and it shouldn't be too much longer. So the Sooners have 17 verbal commits right now as we stand here on June 24th. That number could creep as high as 19 or even 20 by the end of the month of June.
Parker, we're into 3 recruiting cycles with Brent Venables. I'm guessing we had about 5 to 6 with Lincoln Riley. If we put those offers, those targets, those signees, the map down, the list of players, the rankings, is there any discernible difference in the approach, the level of player, the part of the country, anything like that?
No, there certainly is. And, I think what Venables has demonstrated is a couple of things. One, it's almost, and it's almost kind of paradoxical the way that this has played out, but you've seen an increased emphasis on local recruiting, Oklahoma and Texas specifically, because DFW is just 2 hours south of Norman. So right across the Red River there, Oklahoma recruits very heavily from DFW and the rest of the state of Texas. Oklahoma and Texas is really the lifeblood for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. And that's Venables' mission, is to make it the lifeblood. But we're also seeing him pull prospects from places that Lincoln Riley nor any other Oklahoma coach in the recent past, Bob Stoops, John Blake, whoever, you're seeing him pull players from states that none of those coaches ever touched, like North Dakota, for instance. They signed a player from the state of Minnesota last year in highly coveted defensive end Wyatt Gilmore. They've signed several players in recent years from the state of Washington. They've gone to Nebraska, a state that they hadn't touched in almost half a century. They've gone to Colorado. They've gone all the way up to New Jersey in some cases. And so you're seeing Brent Venables take the Oklahoma brand to places that it has not yet, or I should say not historically been on the recruiting trail, but you're still seeing the nucleus of Oklahoma's recruiting classes come from that local radius, Oklahoma and Texas. So in terms of philosophy, that's the major shift in my mind. And then also, I think the one thing that stands out about Venables' recruiting, and this was kind of expected when he took over, Lincoln Riley was very famous for signing incredible skill position players, some of the top skill position offensive players in the country. On the defensive side of the ball was where things kind of lagged behind. And Venables, in no small part because of the core of assistants that he has compiled at Oklahoma, has demonstrated an ability to recruit both sides of the ball with equal aplomb. And you see a ton of balance in the first 3 classes that he has assembled at the University of Oklahoma. You're seeing them recruit the secondary very well, the defensive line very well. Obviously, Brent Venables is going to recruit linebackers at a high level. Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the top offensive line coaches in the country. He's always going to get some big boys up front that are capable of getting on the field early and being future NFL mainstays. At Oklahoma, the lineage and the great tradition at the quarterback position means you will always have quarterbacks that want to come wear the crimson and cream. And then wide receivers and running backs, you've got DeMarco Murray and you've got Emmett Jones, two of the absolute best in the nation with their positions. There's no weakness in recruiting right now as far as any singular position group is concerned for Oklahoma. And that is a dynamic that these fans are certainly enjoying.
We've got Parker Thune on the line. We appreciate Parker stopping by on a regular basis. Catch the Daily Dose, though, on KREF Sports Monday through Friday, noon to 3 Central Time, and OU Insider on Rivals. So I'll make this as a statement not against Oklahoma or Brent Venables. Has nothing to do. It's just the business of college football. It's all about college football. So we've got Brent Venables here in the last couple of days. Signing a 6-year contract extension, $51.6 million. That's $8.5 million per season. So the deal, Parker, would be that he's into a 6-year contract. Let's say, Sooner fans, forgive me, 8-4, 7-5, and let's say the third year he's on a hot seat, he loses his job. They've got a big buyout on their hands. If he succeeds, they're probably tearing this thing up in 2 or 3 years anyway, and jacking him up with Kirby Smart at $13 million. That pay scale is obviously on the inflation scale, just like everything else. So again, this is not a statement against Oklahoma or Brent Venables. It's more about just the way business is done in college football. You got to retain your coach. You got to show that he's going to be there for a while. But is there anything nuanced to this that is different to the OU Venables equation of why it was done now?
Well, as I do with many things that happen at Oklahoma and across the rest of the college football world, Mark, I want to try to look at this through the lens of recruiting, because I think it's pretty well known around these parts, and you don't even necessarily have to be in the Oklahoma camp to understand that Brent Venables is committed to being at Oklahoma for the long haul. He wants, I think ideally, and he hasn't said this, but in so many words, he has hinted at the fact that he would like this to be his only head coaching job. And he would like to coach Oklahoma well into not only the SEC transition, but beyond. And so Brent Venables wants to be here. Oklahoma wants him here in Norman, Oklahoma. And so there's a commitment on both sides. And it's important to clarify. It's not a 6-year extension. It's a 2-year extension of his previous contract. So that takes it 6 more years from where we sit today through the 2029 season. But previously his contract ran through 2027. Now it runs through 2029. So $400,000 raise. So you can basically chalk that up. That's an inflation raise. But as I see it, and as I look at it through the lens of recruiting, this is an extra measure of stability that I think is afforded to recruits and their parents and their extended families. Whenever they come to Oklahoma, they have the assurance that Brent Venables is going to be at Oklahoma for the entirety of their tenure there. And that's an important thing to be able to sell to recruits, is if you're Brent Venables and you have a kid walking in your office, let's say this past weekend, they had their big recruiting weekend, right? And there are going to be players, and they're especially parents, that ask about your contract situation, your level of satisfaction. Hey, if we commit to the University of Oklahoma, can we count on the fact that you're going to be here to see my son's collegiate career through, and that you're going to be there to coach him every step of the way? And if your contract only runs through 2027, well, you can't make that promise. If your contract runs through 2029, you can. And so I think this is a reflection. I think what this shows, what this reflects on both ends, is that Brent Venables is committed to be at Oklahoma in the long haul. Oklahoma is committed to everything that Brent Venables has cultivated foundationally, culturally. They believe they have the right formula heading into the SEC. And they don't want there to be any question in the minds of recruits who travel to Norman and consider the University of Oklahoma as an option for their matriculation. They don't want there to be any question in those kids' minds that if they come to Oklahoma, they're not going to have to worry about getting caught up in the coaching carousel, which is something, we see it every offseason, Mark. There are major coaching moves. There are assistants that take bigger jobs. There are head coaches that uproot their entire staff and take them with them to other places. See Jed Fish at Washington, for instance. And so I think what this reflects is that everybody at the administrative level and in the Switzer Center at the University of Oklahoma believes that this is going to work. There's a blueprint here. We have our guy. Our guy doesn't want to go anywhere. And we don't want anybody that walks in here to have any misconceptions about what the future of Oklahoma football looks like if they want to be a part of it.
All good points. Two assistants, DeMarco Murray and Miguel Chavis, also given contract extensions. Were they just due, or is that a reward for a job well done?
It's a little bit of both. I think obviously, you look at the work that this Oklahoma staff is doing right now on the whole, whether it's recruiting or whether it's development. Everybody deserves a pat on the back for a job well done. I don't think there's any assistant coach on Oklahoma's staff that hasn't pulled their weight through 2 years of the Venables era. And granted, it hasn't been a smashing success yet. 6-7 in year 1, 10-3 in year 2, but it was never going to be an overnight fix at Oklahoma with the hand that Lincoln Riley left for Brent Venables on his way out the door. And so I think there is an acknowledgement, and this kind of goes back to the Venables contract, right? This thing is headed in the right direction. It's not there are no microwave solutions in college football. There are certainly instances where a coach like Sonny Dykes, right, has an amazing year out of nowhere. First year at TCU, they go play for the national championship, and then what happens? The crash and burn comes the following year. So it's very, very difficult to have microwave success in college football. What you have to do is you have to lay the foundation. You have to reshape the culture. You have to establish your vision. And then you have to really from there, just build and build and build and build towards a program, and not just a team. Because you think about it, a team is 1 year. A program is broader than just one season. If you want to build a championship program and not just a championship team, you got to take steps along the way. You can't take one giant step. You got to take a bunch of small steps. And so what I perceive at Oklahoma is that all of these assistants are satisfied where they're at as of right now. And who knows, maybe a big time coordinator gig or even a head coaching gig comes up for one of them this offseason. You can never rule that out these days. But there's a lot of camaraderie within that building and a lot of belief that, hey, if we stick together, if we band together, as long as we're in it, not necessarily for a decade, but if we're in it together for several years at Oklahoma, we have the opportunity to build something and be part of something that's really cool and really unique across the landscape of college football, because rare are the staffs these days, especially at this level, Mark, that can stick together for that long.
Absolutely. Nomadic industry, no doubt. It always has been, and even more so now than it's ever been. You mentioned assistant coaches and their goals and their aspirations. Seth Luttrell has been a head coach. He's an offensive coordinator now, of course, taking over for Jeff Lebby. Real indications of a different philosophy approach, or is he going to not mess with a good thing?
There's going to be some interesting, I would say, nuance to Seth Luttrell's offense that you haven't yet seen from Oklahoma throughout the Riley era, throughout the Lebby era, as those two are obviously the previous offensive masterminds for the Sooners. And from everything I've heard from sources within the building, there are going to be structural similarities to what Lebby does. And pretty much any offensive coordinator these days that's running a pretty modern scheme, you're going to have basic tenets that carry over from playbook to playbook. And so I think there will be some natural similarities, but I think there are also, beyond that, some additional similarities in the way that Luttrell and Lebby kind of visualize their offense, visualize success, and lay the groundwork thereof. But you will see some things from Luttrell that you did not see from Lebby, and you will not see some things from Luttrell that you did see from Lebby. And I don't know. I would like if I had to put a number on it, I would say there's going to be a 60-70% resemblance to what Oklahoma fans have been accustomed to the last couple of years in terms of the offensive scheme. but there will be a lot of novelties. There will be things that you see on a Saturday now with Seth Luttrell calling the shots that are new and that you haven't seen before. I think one thing that Oklahoma fans would like to see is a bit of a slower pace offensively, and I think that can be expected. Lebby was a hurry-up guy. They were going to get down the field as fast as possible, press the defense, force the issue. Don't know that we're going to see exactly that same mentality with Luttrell at the controls. I think they'll still go fast. I think there will still be an element of tempo, but I also think you'll see them huddle more than we've been accustomed to.
Parker Thune, OU Insider on Rivals, KREF Sports, Monday through Friday, noon to 3 Central Time. I'm combining a question in the chat about the center position in particular with what I'm reading here in Athlon from an opposing SEC assistant coach who is highly questioning the offensive line's preparedness for the SEC. So the center position in particular, if you've got a beat on that, and then also just general offensive line uncertainty heading into a better league.
I think it's fair to have some concerns about where Oklahoma's offensive line is at heading into the SEC. I think that's natural. I think that's perfectly fair. The Sooners lose all 5 starters up front. Anytime you lose all 5 starters, it's going to be a bit of a mystery box, if you will, as to what you get the following year. And the Sooners did a good job in the transfer portal of bringing in some experienced contributors, guys that are plug-and-play starters. Fabechi Weewu from North Texas, Garen Hatchett from Washington. Most recently, Branson Hickman from SMU, who's going to be the program's starting center this fall. So the pieces are there. The talent is there. The question is, and it's always a question with the offensive line, regardless of how many starters you're replacing, how well will they mesh as a unit? Because you can have 5 high-level football players up front, but if they aren't working in coordination with one another, you're going to have problems. And that's where Bill Bedenbaugh's expertise and his penchant as a coach comes into play. I think, and it's becoming a more common sentiment around here in Oklahoma, Mark. I think the Oklahoma offensive line is actually going to be surprisingly strong relative to the national expectation, because I do think there's that perception that Oklahoma might not get outright bulldozed, but that they'll have issues up front. What I see, and I was talking to somebody this past weekend, a good source on the matter, who said, look, here's what'll probably happen. It'll take them 3 weeks, which you look at their non-conference slate. It's Temple, it's Houston, and it's Tulane. 3 games that Oklahoma should win. So it'll take them 3 weeks. They'll have some things to work through. They'll have some kinks to work out. But once they do, they're going to be completely solid.
I saw a Pro Football Focus grade on Hickman that was really solid, considers him a high-level player. And speaking of which, PFF with OU at number 13 in the nation. Phil Steele has his power ranking, which indicates how good he thinks the team is. Then he combines it with the schedule. He's got Oklahoma as the 7th best team in the country. Now he combines that with the difficult SEC schedule, and he's got a number 20 ranking. Athlon says the Sooners at number 16, number 8 in the SEC. How much of that's reality versus just giving Oklahoma its typical due respect as a brand?
Yeah, well, I think there's, we were having this conversation last night on the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast, but I think there's some truth on both fronts when you're talking about the transition for Oklahoma to the SEC. Is on the one hand, yes, there needs to be some respect to hold out for what Oklahoma is as a brand, the coaching staff that they have in place, and the talent that they have not only retained on the defensive side, but brought in on the offensive side to set themselves up well for 2024. But also the SEC is a meat grinder. And so I don't really know where I stand. I think it's going to be hard to render a definitive judgment until we see some games this fall. Non-conference play might not tell us everything, but I think it'll start to give us a sense of who's real and who's not in the SEC. But Oklahoma's not going to be a pushover in the SEC. By no means are they going to walk in and dominate that conference. That should not be the expectation that anyone has, even the most diehard of Sooner fans. And I would hope that there's nobody that does have that expectation. There's going to be an adjustment period into the SEC, no question about it. But Oklahoma's not going to jump into that conference and be an also-ran. That is not their standard. That is not their expectation. And you look at the talent that they have on both sides of the ball heading into 2024. That's not a 6-7 win team. That's an 8-9, maybe 10 win team.
Is there a concern, Parker, whether it's from the fan base or from people that are more in the know, a more reasonable concern that Texas is getting away, that 2023 was a strong indication of where Texas football is headed, and maybe they're getting away from Oklahoma, even though the Sooners, of course, won the game on the field?
Yeah, no, I don't think so, Mark. And I think, look, if you look at Oklahoma and Texas's seasons, their respective seasons in 2023, certainly Texas made the college football playoff. Oklahoma went to the Alamo Bowl. The Longhorns won 12 games. They were 12-2. Oklahoma was 10-3. So there's some separation there. But Oklahoma lost a couple of the close games that they played with ranked opponents in Kansas and Oklahoma State. Those were their two losses in Big 12 play. And Texas escaped when they were challenged by a couple of those same, and not even ranked. Yes, Kansas State played them close at home. That game went to overtime. They got to run for their money from Wyoming in non-conference play. So I think there's a
Houston.
and Houston, exactly, Houston. And so there were several of those games for both programs, right, that could have gone either way. And I think the way that many, and this, I don't think this is exclusive to Oklahoma fans, I think the way that many are looking at it is there's a degree of variance, of fluctuation there that just happened to fall in Texas's favor in 2023, and the degree of separation between those two programs in 2024 and beyond is not terribly large. I might even say, and look, Mark, Texas has a much easier schedule than Oklahoma in 2024. Much easier. Texas ought to win more games looking at their schedule versus Oklahoma's. But I think Oklahoma's got the better roster in 2024. You look at all that Texas lost. They had 11 players drafted, which, hat tip to them. Steve Sarkisian and his staff, they're developing. Good on them. But you got to replace 11 NFL-bound guys. Those aren't the only guys you got to replace, right? They lost guys that maybe aren't NFL talent, but graduated having held a role of some kind with Texas football as part of the starting 22. And so Oklahoma brings back 9 of 11 starters on defense. They replaced Dylan Gabriel at the quarterback position with a former 5-star quarterback signee in Jackson Arnold. And so, yeah, I don't think that's even a hot take. I'd say Oklahoma has the better roster. I'd say Texas is set up better from a scheduling standpoint. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see which of those two teams comes out with the upper hand record-wise this fall because of that give and take discrepancy there.
Our buddy Jackson stopping by. Jackson, thank you so much for the contribution. He would like to know your thoughts on Oklahoma and LSU playing on rivalry week. Of course, that's been bedlam for the most part for Oklahoma through the generations, but LSU on that final weekend of the season.
I love it, man. I think I'm hoping that's a night game in Death Valley because night games in Death Valley are just the coolest, right? But there's a good deal of beef between the OU fan base and the LSU fan base, and it dates back to the 2003 Sugar Bowl. There was, I'm not going to, I've heard a lot of firsthand accounts. I'm not going to relay those firsthand accounts. I'll leave that to the folks that actually lived it. I was quite young at the time, but suffice to say, I've heard many an account over the years from Oklahoma fans that walked away from that experience with less than stellar perceptions of the LSU fan base. And so they haven't played each other since. So it's been, 21 years now? I don't know how many Sooner fans, I don't know what percentage of the Sooner fans are kind of from the new generation like myself that won't have a firsthand recollection or an experience at that game. But there's a good deal of clean SEC hate there. And so I think it's not a rivalry by any means, certainly not yet. It might be at some point down the line in the new SEC, but I think there's enough vitriol between those two fan bases that I think it's going to be an interesting addition to that rivalry week slate.
Yeah, a lot of options the SEC could have gone with in regards to trying to match up certain teams that have connections but aren't necessarily rivals on that final weekend, because that's what has been the approach. I don't know what the Big 12 is doing. They're all over the place. They have not tried to establish rivalries in their scheduling for the final weekend, but that's at this point, of course, no concern to Oklahoma fans. Parker Thune here, OU Insider. It's on Rivals. Catch his work right there, Monday through Friday as well on KREF Sports, noon to 3 Central Time. Anything you'd like to highlight in either of those locations?
We just did a complete company-wide rebrand at Rivals. So at ouinsider.com and any other Rivals affiliate site, brand new layout, brand new logo, brand new look. I think it's awesome. I think many of you will think it's awesome. So if you need another incentive to go sign up over at ouinsider.com, and come check out the new visual era of the Rivals brand. Really, really cool. And just dropped about 2 hours ago. So it has not been active, has not been implemented for all that long, but super exciting. Always fun to have some new aesthetics at play. And that's what we have. Obviously, the content is always flowing over at ouinsider.com. Ton of intel following the Champion Barbecue official visit weekend for the Sooners. So, yeah, by all means, go sign up. You can use promo code ChampionBBQ24, ChampionBBQ24 to get free access through fall camp if you sign up by the end of the day today.
Did everyone catch that? One more time, Parker, because that's a pretty long promo code. Want to make sure everyone got that, because
all caps,
today's the day, folks.
All caps, ChampionBBQ24. There you go.
Makes sense. Parker, thank you so much for stopping by. We always appreciate the breakdown. I know you've got a ton going on, so for you to make the time for us is much appreciated.
Not a problem, Mark. I appreciate you.
Have a good day.
You too.
So if you didn't catch that promo code, you get Rivals Insider for free through summer camp. Just put in the promo code. I was unaware of that. So really good stuff from Parker Thune. Oklahoma fans, of course, you're SEC fans now. So keep in mind that we've got the SEC live show every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So give me a call Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time for at least an hour, the SEC live show over on the main channel and also on the SEC channel. So please subscribe to the SEC channel. The link is in the description section down below. And for the rest of the day here at the Voice of College Football, we have the Texas Live show. Yes, Texas Live, Oklahoma fans. You can jump on over to the Texas channel, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, every Monday with Matthew Miller. And then we've got the USC live show. So Oklahoma fans, this is the day of trolling, day of trash talking and trolling for you Oklahoma fans on Mondays at the Voice of College Football. Texas Live at 6 Central, USC Live at 9 Central on the USC channel. So please join us right there. And in the meantime, folks, we will hear a word from our sponsor. Love what I do as a sports commentator. I have definitely been blessed. I enjoy my career. But I got to say, if I could turn back time, I would learn the business side of sports management, how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to manage situations. And then there's also those times in which you feel stuck in a job, stuck in a career, just feeling that there's a dead end and wondering and waiting, when is that break going to happen? Well, unfortunately, I got to tell you, that break is not coming unless you make it happen. Sports is your passion. You love it, you live it, you breathe it. Why not make your passion your career? Introducing Southern New Hampshire University, our sponsor. At SNHU, you will learn the business side of sports, sports management principles, and how to gather and analyze data. This degree will help you prepare for a career as an athletic director, sports information director, marketing manager, and other exciting roles in the sports industry. You'll be able to tap into SNHU's network of graduates working in sports-related organizations. You'll also have the opportunity to take advantage of an internship or an experiential learning course within the field. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will be right there to help you with your job search. SNHU is accredited, nonprofit, and has radically affordable tuition. SNHU was voted one of the country's most innovative universities by U.S. News and World Report. Just go to snhu.edu/VOCFB. The link's also in my description section down below to see if you qualify for SNHU's sports management program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have existing college credits that could fast-track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. Your exciting sports management degree at SNHU awaits you. Do it now.